The rifle shattered against the gravel with a sharp crack that echoed across the quiet training field. For a moment nobody moved. The girl just stood there, staring at the broken pieces of the old gun at her feet. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from something deeper, something heavier. Across from her, three young men laughed loudly, their boots kicking dust into the air as if they had just finished a harmless joke. One of them raised his phone, recording the moment. "Look at that antique," he mocked. "What did you expect?" "It belongs in a museum." The girl said nothing. She only knelt slowly beside the broken rifle, brushing dirt from the cracked wooden stock with careful fingers as if the weapon were something fragile, something sacred. "Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening." Her name was Emily Carter, and most people in that small coastal town believed she was just a quiet mechanic's daughter who spent too much time fixing old things nobody wanted anymore. What they didn't know was why she kept that rifle. The weapon had belonged to her father, a Navy man who had carried it during his last deployment before he never came home again. It wasn't valuable in money, the scope was outdated, the barrel worn smooth by years of use. But to Emily it held the weight of memories, early mornings at a rural shooting range, her father's steady voice teaching patience, discipline, and respect. "Never point a weapon at something you don't intend to protect," he used to say. The bullies didn't know any of that. They had followed her to the local training field after seeing her practice alone for weeks. To them it was entertainment, a girl with an old rifle pretending to be something she wasn't. "Come on," one of them sneered. "What are you gonna do now? Glue it back together?" The laughter grew louder, but something unexpected happened then. The wind shifted slightly, carrying the distant rumble of a motorcycle approaching along the dirt road. At first nobody paid attention, until the engine stopped, heavy boots stepped onto gravel, slow, measured. The man who approached wore no uniform, just a simple dark jacket and faded jeans. Yet something about the way he walked, calm, controlled, aware of every movement around him, silenced the laughter almost instantly. He stopped beside Emily and glanced down at the broken rifle. For a long moment he didn't speak. Emily looked up, confusion flickering across her face. She recognized him faintly. He was the quiet man who had occasionally watched from the edge of the range these past few weeks. A stranger, or so she thought. The man crouched beside her, picking up the cracked stock carefully. His fingers traced the worn engraving near the trigger guard. A name, Carter. His expression changed, not anger, not shock, recognition. When he finally stood, the air around him felt heavier somehow. The bullies shifted uneasily, though none of them understood why. "Who broke it?" he asked quietly. The question wasn't loud, but it carried weight. The tallest of the three shrugged, trying to keep his confidence. "Relax, man, it's just a junk rifle." The stranger's gaze didn't move. "Who broke it?" he repeated. Something in his voice made the wind feel colder. One of the boys stepped forward, forcing a laugh. "Yeah, we smashed it. What's the problem?" Silence followed. Emily watched the stranger carefully. There was no rage in his face, only a deep sadness that seemed older than the moment itself. Then he spoke again. "That rifle belonged to a man who saved my life." The words fell like stones. The boy's smiles faded. The stranger reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out a small metal coin, worn, scratched, unmistakable to anyone who knew military tradition. A Navy SEAL challenge coin. "My teammate," he continued calmly. "Your father, Emily. He carried this rifle during our last mission together." Emily's breath caught in her throat. The bullies glanced at one another, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. The man standing before them wasn't just some random bystander, he was a Navy SEAL, and suddenly their prank didn't feel funny anymore. The tallest boy's voice cracked slightly. "Look, we didn't know." "No," the SEAL replied quietly. "You didn't." For a long moment the field remained silent except for the distant sound of waves crashing beyond the cliffs. The boys slowly dropped their eyes. Pride dissolved into something else, regret. One of them bent down and picked up a piece of the broken rifle, handing it back to Emily with shaking hands. "I'm sorry." It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no threats, just the quiet weight of understanding. The SEAL placed a steady hand on Emily's shoulder. "Your father taught me something once," he said softly. "Respect matters more than strength." Emily nodded slowly, tears glistening but not falling. The rifle could be repaired, wood could be restored, metal could be cleaned, but the lesson in that moment would last much longer. Because real power isn't loud, it's the quiet strength to stand with dignity when the world tries to break what matters to you. And sometimes the strongest warriors are the ones who choose mercy when revenge would be easier. Kindness leaves echoes longer than fear ever could, and somewhere in the quiet wind over that small training field, the memory of a fallen father stood tall once again. If this story moved you, tell me your country in the comments and subscribe to Cinematic Whispers for more powerful stories that remind us what courage, respect, and humanity truly mean.